If you want to make a female act successful, you need teen girls. If you want to make a male act successful, you need teen girls. They sort of are the nucleus of the flywheel of fandom. Jules LeBron said demure, as we all know, and that became a phenomenon because young girls first picked up on that.
Gen Z doesn't want to be talked at. They want to be understood. Today I'm in community with Sharon Mussalli, CEO of NowThis, startup builder and media veteran from Meta, iHeartMedia, and Bustle Digital Group. She brings a rare blend of creative instinct and cultural insight to one of the most influential brands for younger audiences. Sharon reveals why relevance matters more than reach, what legacy media gets wrong, and how trust is earned by listening first.
Part of what I do is create an environment where artists can make money and thrive and be creative and come up with new things that have never been done before. And I, every single day of the week, would take less reach for more relevance.
What is it that makes a media brand culturally relevant, especially today?
Making the non-traditional choices, because those are representing what's really happening in society now, instead of jumping right in line, just getting lost in the sauce and not being unique and different, being status quo.
What did you understand early about how Gen Z thinks about trust that legacy media has completely missed? Before we get into the episode, I'd really appreciate if you take a second to hit subscribe now. Every subscriber matters and helps the show have an opportunity to grow and reach more people. Plus, you'll be the first to hear about what else is coming your way. Thanks for being here. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. This is In Community with Fahad Khwaja. Sharon Mussalli, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you again.
You too. So I'm going to start at the very beginning. And what that means is the very beginning for you. Tell me a bit about one of your earliest memories.
So it's funny. I was thinking about that last night, talking to my husband, and I'm like, all these quirky things growing up in an immigrant household, like which one sticks the most with me? But I think at the end of the day, it was that I was always dancing. Like from an incredibly early age, it was pivotal to me to perform for you and dance and make up my own choreography. But to the point that I know kids do that, but I was obsessive about it. And I know this is going to be an old person's reference, but I would watch Solid Gold and have to dance with the dancers and really felt like I was dancing the entire show with the dancers. When I realized what musical theater was, I was obsessed with all the dancing in musical theater. Fame, if anyone remembers that show, was like such a big deal for me. And I think that really is like the characteristic of who I am in its purest essence from when I could walk until still today. And that's really me. And I think it's still part of me and actually rooted in like why I am where I am in the industry and still being in entertainment all stems back to this like love and desire for the arts and for performance.
Wow. I remember Solid Gold, by the way, and I was very young, but it was, that was a show. That was a show.
My parents would, again, obviously no streaming. So you'd have to get yelled at to run into the living room and they would yell. They knew to yell for me, even though they probably had no idea what was happening in the show, to make me come into the living room so I could do my hour-long performance for everyone. So it was very cute.
So tell me a bit more about, where you grew up. Where was that? What was the community like?
So I was born and raised in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Shout out to Rhode Island. Very few people probably who have been there. But to an immigrant family. My family's from Aleppo, Syria. Everyone is from Aleppo, Syria. The fun fact is I did Ancestry DNA at one point just to think I would get a sprinkle of something really interesting in there, knowing that everyone was from one town and had always been there. And in fact, I am 98% undiluted from Aleppo, Syria. So I am fully from that sort of region, the Levant in general. And so that's the environment in which I grew up. I would argue, I bet you other immigrant kids would be able to relate to this, or kids of immigrants, which is we were living as though we were in Syria. The rest of the world, America, was America. But if you were in the perimeter of the property, this was, in the middle of town, from where we were. And all of my friends grew up that way. So it was an interesting sort of thrash between you leave the house and you're trying to integrate into, what's happening in culture and society and things you like. And then you re-enter the house and it's as though none of those things are happening. And you're really part of a discrete culture that is happening, 6,000 miles away from you at the same time.
Yeah, you walked in the door and you were in Little Aleppo all of a sudden.
Still to this day, and like Thanksgiving, for my husband who's not of the culture, I had to tell him the first time it's going to be a complete immersion. And then when Thanksgiving's done, we can come back out into, New York City and the rest of what's happening in the world. Yeah.
That's amazing. So that kind of brings me to my next question. That was something that I think maybe most people probably don't know about you, but what would you say is one thing that really surprises people about you or your journey?
The reality is I am very proud of my identity. I obviously also sound like an American as I am. I was born here, though I don't have the accent that my parents have, or maybe some of the gestures or the way in which they, lived were probably more emblematic of Syria, maybe than America. And obviously I'm very American. And so therefore, it is true that in business and in life, nobody thinks I'm Arab or Syrian, more specifically. And so they assume I'm not. And I think what I've heard many times, I appear to be ambiguous, which I've heard, or people have decided to pick a country like Greece or Italy or whatever they might want, all great places. But rarely do people, almost never, do people know sort of where I'm from and what have you. And that can create, interestingly enough, its own set of challenges. I've referenced my husband already. I'll probably reference him numerous times. He is Black American, right? Like 4 generations removed from slavery. You know what he is when he walks into the room. So the other person in the room is speaking with the same level of knowledge. Now, may not always be complimentary or excited about your background, but they know, right? When you look at him. With me, it's, you have no idea. And so you're speaking freely based on what you assume that I am, which is a completely different experience. And we sort of watch that in contrast, as we move through this earth together, of how people respond to his Blackness and him being African-American and me being Syrian and Arab, but maybe not knowing that,
Yeah. It's funny. I, lived in Queens for years, and I remember I used to say I felt safe wherever I went because everyone thought I was their brother. The Arabs thought I was one of them. The Greeks thought I was one of them. The South Asians thought I was one of them. Like everyone was like, yeah, you're one of us. It felt very comfortable. But I hear you, being in those spaces, people might not expect what the reality is. So let's talk a little bit about, your career. You've worked at, a number of different companies. You've had some pretty exciting roles. As you've gone through those, what would you say you've developed as your superpower?
I always will, I guess, start and lean on my quant background in this industry. Obviously, I'm nothing special at Goldman Sachs, right? So there's a lot of me's in that respect there. However, in this industry, media and entertainment, I do think that is sort of my unicorn superpower that is not often, not never, but not often found in people in my types of roles in this space. And so because my parents are immigrant parents and off the boat and so on, I was heavily encouraged to pursue a STEM career, or at least major in things that are STEM related and pursue, those more sort of rigorous, quantitative types of disciplines. And so I did. I was applied math major undergrad, and I went to MIT for business school. So I'm through and through somebody who actually does love math quite a bit and uses it every second of every day. And I do actually believe that's my point of distinction. I love the arts, hence the dancing. And I've always loved the arts. And if I didn't have the upbringing that I had, I would probably be coming to you as a performer and an artist. But that wasn't what my parents wanted me to do. And so I applied the love for arts and entertainment to the skills that I have, which is quantitative math, modeling, knowing how to build, grow, and scale a business, understanding what the underlying financials mean to the vision and the future and the health of a company and so on. It's obviously all interrelated. And now I believe truly that part of what I do is create an environment where artists can make money and thrive and be creative and come up with new things that have never been done before, because it requires a solid, stable, sustainable business often underneath you, and, something that can really become healthy for you to, in perpetuity, be able to make the kind of art and creative video and whatever else we do that you want to make. So it actually makes me feel great inside, because that superpower enables the passion that I've always had, right? It enables that to come to life in other people.
What is it that makes a media brand culturally relevant, especially today?
So I think a lot of it for us, or for me and for this team, was making the non-traditional choices throughout this journey, because those are representing what's really happening in society now, because it's not a lot of it is happening in terms of media, instead of just jumping right in line with my peers and therefore just getting lost in the sauce and not being unique and different and not presenting anything new and just sort of being status quo. I am obsessed with pop culture. I am obsessed with entertainment. I always was. When I was the equivalent of what Gen Z is today in terms of years of life, I was fully immersed in the same way I see people being immersed in culture and so on. And I think that's something you can't fake.
What's the difference between being culturally relevant versus just being frequently shared, especially on social?
I think frequently shared is a bit of a trap. So what we were doing, and what many companies at which I had worked previously still do, and I totally understand it, and it's very popular and successful on social, for example, is writing like, today is Ariana Grande's birthday, and then 10 memes of Ariana Grande saying very witty, fun, relatable things, something like that, right? It's very, very popular, right? Like a roundup type of thing, and often using pop culture or celebrity as a vehicle for that, such that all of the Ariana Grande fans will, of course, like, comment, and share that till the cows come home. So it have amazing reach, amazing views, amazing engagement, but you're not delivering anything new or culturally relevant to anyone, because everyone knows today is Ariana Grande's birthday and 700 other people are going to post the same style content. And so, I think reach is a dangerous thing to only be searching for. And I, every single day of the week, would take less reach for more relevance. And to me, to really answer your question in full, I really do rely on the people on this team who are living, breathing it, not just at work, but in real life and so on, and truly in the zeitgeist, to determine what culturally relevant is and where we need to be. Often they'll book guests on shows and I have no idea who that person is, but sometimes I go, I'm not supposed to know who that person is, right? Because they're culturally relevant now to a certain audience that is not me.
What did you understand early about how Gen Z thinks about trust that legacy media has completely missed?
So I'll say we reach 177 million people monthly in the country. So that if it's on do your math, 177 technically over 330, right? It's and not all of them, some of them are babies and some of them are, 102 years old. So you sort of cut out the fringe and you look at like the real demographic of like Americans consuming media. I mean, our penetration is incredible and vast. And I'm so proud of the team. That's all on people who do this every day and know exactly how to do it. And it is predominantly female. That I would argue is part of the strategy. And when I was at Instagram Meta, it was made very, very, very clear to me that the way to drive success on social starts with teen women, which is now Gen Z women, effectively. And then they set the trend. If you think of the evolution of Snapchat, for example, Snap was built on young women taking snaps, sending them, messaging people, et cetera, et cetera. It was built on that. Instagram was built on that. And even after I've left and I've still in contact with people that are still there or recently left, that is still the strategy. And so much so that I went to a Bloomberg Showtime summit in October. And the CEO of Warner Music said, if you want to make a female act successful, you need teen girls. If you want to make a male act successful, you need teen girls. And everyone laughed, but it's the same thesis, which is they sort of are the nucleus of the flywheel of fandom. And if you can't activate the nucleus and the base, you will never get this sort of echo of fandom throughout every and all generation as they sort of start things off and we all sort of follow and copy. I always use Demure as the example. Jules LeBron said Demure, as we all know, and that became a phenomenon because young women picked up on that and then made it a nationwide cultural phenomenon. I think that's where you have to start. That's where your authenticity starts. That core is telling sort of the internet and the world what is happening, what's popular, what's trending, what's in the zeitgeist. So I always stay close to that demographic. And that is why I really believe we have that incredible penetrative reach that we do.
What signals told you that Gen Z didn't just want objective content and that they actually wanted content that reflected their values and the things that matter to them in a different way?
I think often historically, and even in some of these measurement platforms, you're measured based on the follower, the demographics of the follower count, which is such a dated way of looking at the performance of your posts. Because as we all know, go for who you're following on Instagram. I'm going to bet you 50% of the people that you're following, you have no idea who they are. You're like, what is this? And how did I? And we all do this, right? You look through and you're like, that's something I liked, 2 years ago. And I don't even know why I'm following this person or this brand, right? And so we switched our thinking to looking at the viewers. And so that is the intersection of engagement, right? So like the viewer is the audience and those people have engaged, right? So now this is the real intersection that we care about. And then how are they engaging? What are the demographics of who's watching? Which things do they latch onto? What do they love? What do they hate? We are really, really analytics driven. Maybe the quant side of me is part of that, but there's an amazing person here who leads our analytics department who's phenomenal. And we really, really look at what things are hitting and what things are not. So it's not just the gut of the creative. And so that's what's really important to us. And that was the signal that told us that Gen Z is looking for the type of things that we're making. And I would say the point of distinction for us is storytelling, that the pieces that we create have an arc, a beginning, middle, and an end. And there is a story being told. Sometimes we'll post flat things, but that is not our bread and butter. That's not what we're known for. So be it on the social issue side or on the entertainment side, what I hope you see when you see our content is there is an arc. There is a story. There's a reason for you to watch this whole thing. And we're delivering it in a 90-second bite-sized package that is appropriate for how you're consuming media. That's what people are latching onto. And I also read every comment like a maniac. I read like almost every comment. And I look for people commenting, maybe not everyone, but many. And I look for people commenting on things that happened at the 57th second, at the 83rd second, which is a signal that they are staying and watching beyond just the obvious data, which you could see all of that obviously at a high level. But I'm like, oh, people are commenting on this thing that's downstream. That means they loved it and they stayed for that.
How do you intentionally build something that helps people see that this is really for them?
Part of it is I let the creators do their thing. And I actually think that was a big learning lesson for me last year, that in the spirit of trying to get this 180 completed as fast as possible, I probably over-inserted myself. I definitely did in some ways. For example, I've never made content. I'm really bad at even making a reel. I am not the content creator, right? And so there were times where I would try to go to our editor-in-chief and say, hey, maybe we should make something about cooking, because that would be people like that. And, Gen Z doesn't cook as much and there are brands that would love that. And so starting it from the lens of not what's culturally relevant necessarily, but what the business might require was a huge mistake. And I would say giving a mixed message. I always say a hit is a hit is a hit, right? And if something's a hit, it will be successful. It will be popular. All the things will fall in place underneath it. And if I'm putting my money where my mouth is, I had to stop saying, make a cooking show. I had to go and say, make a hit, make something people love. And it could be the most random thing in the world. But if they love it, it will work. And so really a lot of it was letting go and believing in the people that work on the team, believing in those who hold the keys to the vision, supporting them in what they need, and sitting back. And that will feel like, if you're in my position, a huge risk of not sticking your fingers in everything. But that risk for this team, because they're incredibly talented and capable and driven, it completely paid off. And it landed us directly in the zeitgeist, not only from the concepts and the types of shows we were creating, but also the casting, the locations where we were choosing to shoot, the way in which the people appeared or not appeared. There was so much that went into creating authentic and compelling content for the demo. But I would say, at least from my point of view, it started with taking a huge leap of faith, not only in our hiring, but also then once you hire these people, you have to truly believe in them. That's why you hired them, and step back and say, this is not the thing that I do. This is not the Excel spreadsheet. So I got to let them do it. And it worked beautifully last year. It will continue to work, obviously, this year. I'm so proud of everyone. But that was the biggest learning lesson of you can't micromanage and stick your nose in this whole thing.
What was the X factor that you were looking for in the people that you were hiring?
There's certain things I like in general and people that I hire. You could see that I'm like energetic and really dialed in and a bit theatrical and so on. But I love people who are very creative and really passionate, obviously, about what they do. You can see that very clearly in a first round interview and all the way through. I need people to challenge me. The best things that have ever happened in my career is somebody who likely probably reported to me and said, "You're not getting it, Sharon. Like, I need you to, can we take 30 minutes and I want to explain to you why this thing that you might be passing up is a really good idea and will help you and the business and the team." I live for those moments. Like, please. So that's huge. Solutions oriented, right? Like, this is startup-y. Things will blow up. You will come into work thinking you're going to do A, B, C, D. And today you're actually going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a completely, forget what you thought you were going to do. This is what you're doing today. And you need to be adaptable and take that in stride and not get super emotional and go, "Oh my God," and throw your hands up. We just need to focus on, we can do this. We can do this together. I'm not abandoning anyone. Let's do it together. And we're going to do it. And we're going to move on. And not everything's going to be perfect. So like solution oriented, super creative, likable people that work well in a team environment. And also I cannot underscore it enough. The diversity of thought and challenging the thought constructively is, I think, the most irreplaceable sort of characteristic.
So I want to ask a couple questions then about some of the shows. So Are You Okay is one of the shows. It's obviously a big hit. And, you've had folks who are really well-known, celebrities like the Jonas Brothers, Lizzo, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. There's been a really wide range of well-known folks on the show, but there have also been people who maybe aren't as famous.
Normies,
right?
as the team will call them.
Right. Normies. Exactly. So, one of the things that we've all heard a lot about over the last couple of years is Gen Z being described as anxious, overwhelmed, hyper aware, very, very just concerned about things like mental health. What role do you think media, and particularly a platform like yours, plays when it comes to amplifying those feelings or helping them feel less alone?
So we have 2 channels. We have NowThis, which is really the lifestyle channel, and all of these shows like Are You Okay and Judgy also have their own show pages, which sort of link into the pillar that is the lifestyle entertainment brand known as NowThis. And then we have NowThis Impact, which is a legacy powerhouse channel and brand serving up social issues, content about your everyday life and what matters to a Gen Z and a young millennial person as it relates to society and what's happening in the world. And so I think we address things like that on both sides, and it sort of converges, whether or not you even know that we're the same company producing all of that content. Often people don't realize Are You Okay is the same company as NowThis Impact, for example. It's completely fine. And so I will refer back to the normies. We have no intent of abandoning the normies on our shows. And I think that's what's super special is that you can see yourself as a guest and people will comment, "I want to be on the show and put me in this," and all the time from a first episode. And then The Rock is also on the show. And The Rock, for example, posted his episode of Are You Okay on his feed organically, which was amazing. And I went back and I looked, I'm like, does he do this with all the media? And he doesn't actually. So it was very impressive and very exciting. But you can be on the same show as The Rock. Like growing up, did I think I could be on The Tonight Show sitting next to whatever, Madonna? No, I did not think that was possible because there was a line in the sand. So I think that to some degree, again, with a lighter touch, is speaking to our audience in a way that's like, oh, there's brightness for you. You are part of the conversation. We're not forgetting about you. It's not only about glamour and celebrity and being rich and whatever it is. It's not about that. Like your stories and you are interesting too. And what you go through is really interesting to our audience as well. So it's like spotlighting them and being saying like, almost like you're enough. You're amazing. It's not just about these people. I think that's one sort of way of talking about the topic. And then on the impact side, we actually address it using mental health as an example, we go right for it as a topic. We have a new show that we launched there called Did You See This? We have things that give us hope, but we're kind of evolving that into good news only, and things like that, which is really speaking to, despite some of the things that you can't control in your life, and everyone has those things, what is great about you? What is it that you can do? How are we supporting you? How are we there for you? How are we in the conversation with you? And so I think that, for example, is really the way to approach it, as opposed to what I think some of this legacy media has become, which is a bit pedantic. Like, I'm going to tell you, oh, you don't know about this. I don't like talking at. I really believe, and I hope that people see that what our content does is talk with you, not at you.
One of the things that is just true, right? We've sort of both referenced it already, is neither of us is Gen Z, right? What is one way that you've seen, though, that Gen Z builds belonging or loyalty that the older generations maybe don't understand?
I would say I'm Gen X, to just say it out loud here, everyone. So I'm the oldest person in this conversation, and in many. And so to that end, I think I'll say what I even feel is different about me and the rest of the team, for example, using that even as one example, is I have a separation. I'm like, this is work me. I'm like, maybe I live in Severance. This is work me. This is family me. This is letting loose me. Right. And everyone knows all three exist, but they're not all three always at the same time in front of you. Right. So maybe that's sort of different. Whereas I feel like, not that I'm not bringing my whole self to work, but in a different way, you get that whole package more from certainly the people that work here. And I think also the viewers of our content are more similar to this, as I think it's more emblematic of the demographic, which is like, my whole being is here. My whole being is integrated into how I am responding to your question or creating content in a way I think different than I might respond to things, which is like work me to this, but family me does that. I think there's less of that. And so what you also see in the content that we create is, if there was a Gen Z guest, which there are often Gen Z guests on Are You Okay? The things that they'll talk about are about all of it. I did this thing at work, but I like to play soccer, and I made this dish for all my friends, and I went on this vacation and this bachelor party. It's like a whole thing. Whereas I'm talking to you really about work right now, right? And not style or what's happening with my favorite celebrity or what have you, right? It's a little bit more discreet for me. And so being able to manage a team like that is critical, because they're bringing their whole self to work, which is great. Different than maybe a little than how I sort of show up. And then how do you translate that into, but again, we say authenticity probably too much here, but like authentic stuff for that audience, where they don't feel like, again, it's too polished. They're being spoken at instead of spoken with. It's unrelatable because it's, Jennifer Lawrence or something like that. And it was only Jennifer Lawrence. Like, we take all that into account, I think, in how we show up to our audience.
If someone wanted to build community for Gen Z today, what are 3 non-negotiables that they'd have to get right?
I think media, if it's media we're talking about, which maybe it is or it isn't, but in my world anyways, I think historically media has always been afraid of getting up to the line. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like we say, like, truly, now here's my Gen Z, truly spilling the tea, like truly going there and talking about things that are super relatable, which is like dating, but the real dating, not like, oh, I liked his Hinge profile, but then when I showed up, he didn't look like what he looked like. Yeah, but there's a lot more there, right? That's the obvious, and that's the boring part, but there's like way more, let's be honest, right? And so it's funny, my team calls what I like as brand safety, which is totally fine. Just let's talk about the real things. And you can't be afraid of that, right? Because this is my real life. Again, go back to what I just said. And these are the things I actually talk about and are part of my life. So now we're not going to pretend they're not there because we want to be this candy coated, disseminating inauthentic content. So I would say that, like, having allowing yourself to go there and really incorporate the sort of 360 experience. I would say that's sort of a non-negotiable. It's not a function of age at all, but you do need people within your community or your team that are boots on the ground, ear to the ground, whatever analogy you're supposed to say. And they really know what's happening in culture and society. And they really believe it and understand it. And you have to trust them, right? So I think that's sort of one critical part of the authenticity piece or the non-negotiables as well. And then just lastly, I guess I would say is that knowing those things, being authentic and knowing what people really like. And then the third is how are you packaging that up and delivering it to that audience? And again, specifically in media, like you'll have conversations with brands or other entities and they want maybe some glossy, long, 5-minute, that sounds long, 5-minute long, beautiful 16:9, slow motion, and, you could say it 1,000 times, but you're like, and no one's going to watch that, right? No one is going to watch that. Like you're not in it where it's happening and you got to be in it where it's happening. So then how do you package it up and how do you message appropriately? And doing that appropriately, again, is my third sort of non-negotiable.
When you look ahead into the future, let's say 5 years into the future, do you think community will actually replace institutions when it comes to being a source of trust?
But maybe that was always there. Like before we all started using the word community, we probably said word of mouth, right? Which is essentially community, right? I trust what my best friend tells me is the coolest lipstick shade that I should be wearing versus like the ad, right? Or what L'Oreal tells me in that, using that example. I think that's always been there, right? And I actually think that community needs to maintain the trust. But that's where I thought you were going with it, which is you can also do it wrong at some point as you get bigger or whatever, and then disenfranchise people because the community went in a different direction. There's probably always some level of skepticism, right? Around, politics or big corporations and those people sort of trying to tell you what to do or what's right. I don't think that that's a super new concept, nor do I think community is new. Just the framing maybe is slightly different now that there's been social media and so on. So I don't know if it's going to flip-flop, as I don't think it ever was such that my politicians and my corporations were things that I trusted more than my friend group or my peers or my family or people like me that I could identify that I didn't know. I don't think that was ever the case. So the community, I think, just remains critically important. We often survey our community and, or, viewers, I would say, and ask what their trust level is with us, ranking us against other like companies. How do you trust them? Which ones do you trust the most, more or least? We also have asked our audience, like 50% or more of our audience trusts us so much that they therefore inherently trust the brands with which we work and feel motivated to at least try or, become more curious about a brand messaging that they will also see within our content. So I think those things are really critically important to us. But now this is a 13-year-old brand. I can use that as an example. That trust has always been there. I mean, the originators of the brand and those that had worked there over the past, 12 years have done a phenomenal job of creating this trust. And now I have the responsibility of carrying it forward. So I don't think it's a new thing necessarily. I think it's you need to preserve this thing that is critically important to your success, right?
So speaking of success, what advice would you give someone who's looking to follow in your footsteps?
I don't know if you've heard about Syrian and or Arab women. We're very fiery. We are don't mess with us. Ask my husband. But so I have that. I have the spark. I have the creativity. I have the fire. I have I always say the amplitude, right? There is a high and there is a low. It's all in there. But I had to learn how to use that correctly at work, which was essentially, without muting myself, but sort of reduce the amplitude and take the high down a little bit and the low up a little bit to sort of modulate in this space that is effective for my career. You still know exactly how I feel and what I think. You still know when I'm super excited or not, or I'm disappointed, or whatever it might be. But I probably, hopefully, don't just spit it out the way the inner monologue is saying it anymore. And I take a beat and I think about it. And I also think in terms of the grand scheme of things is this the battle worth taking on? Because there will be a series of battles as you're in any career, right? With your coworkers, with whomever else. Which battles are worth taking on and which ones do I just go, it's not that deep. Think about how you are packaging your responses when you are at work. Just think about how do you want that package to show up? Which is it's the same decision you're making with your hair and your clothes and your style. And if you come into the office or you don't, you're thinking about how you're packaging yourself, period. But this is also part of it. And it's not being inauthentic to at least think about how your responses or how your delivery also appears within the work environment.
So you're delivering a lot every single day. How, in that context, though, with everything that you have going on and everything your company's doing, how do you take care of your own health and well-being?
I am a gym rat. It's just me. It's a non-negotiable. I have a trainer. Hi, Milos. And
I hope Milos is watching. He's going to have to watch.
He's going to have to watch this now. And so I see him 3 days a week. It's really, really important to me. I also know myself. If I didn't have an appointment where I had to show up at a certain time, at a certain place, at a certain time, I would make up every excuse in the world to kick the can down the road and not do it. You got to know yourself and the things that make you happy and you enjoy doing. Also for me, this is not, I would hope like for everyone, it's not a vanity necessarily. It's really about like my mom passed away from dementia. Part of what helps you avoid and or prolong these types of processes is staying active and being fit and making sure that all of you is your mental, headspace, your physical well-being, that all these things sort of need to align. And so I think about all of that in the grand not to make this like a morbid conversation, but like it all matters, right? And so I just forcibly, like anyone I think else would say, is you find that time, you carve it out. And it actually is like the most enjoyable hour before I go to work because it's like endorphins and fun conversation and saying hi to people I know before I have to like get into it, right? It's like a really nice sort of blank space and sort of, opportunity for me, I guess.
What book, podcast, TV show, or otherwise that you've enjoyed would you recommend to others?
Right before the break, I got my perf review. We also get perf reviews over here at the CEO land, just so you know. And it was like right towards the end of the year. It's always like the end of the year.
Yeah,
and
your performance review. Yeah.
Yes, my performance review, sorry. And in it, in that conversation, my chairman said, hey, you should, over the break, you should read Team of Rivals, right? This is perfect for you. So I'm like, oh, what's going on?
You were given homework.
It was like, you will love this and it will shed light on sort of what you're doing in your career in the team. So it's about Lincoln, essentially. People don't know. And that Lincoln's sort of inner circle when he was trying to abolish slavery, his inner circle was like a lot of divergent opinions, a lot of tension, a lot of different points of view on this big radical, change that he was trying to enact, which some people were afraid of and not, and what have you can imagine. And so they all had really big personalities and different points of view, which sometimes you will find yourself in that case in work, obviously. In this case, that was obviously his job too. And how that is not a bad thing. That if your team is strategic and opinionated and passionate, but not necessarily all agreeing with each other, that actually is a benefit to you as the leader, as opposed to a hindrance that is always sort of going at it. If you can lead them through the process and, come to a place where you all work together, which was many of his skills, but like his superpower in that. But that actually at the end of the day is good because they're all pushing each other to be better. It's not mean. It's not trying to hurt somebody. It's not mean spirited. I'm actually trying to push you to even be better at what you're doing. And I also get to hear all the different points of view, which you need diversity of thought around you in order to hopefully make the right decisions moving forward. So that was what he was basically saying to me. Don't worry about it. My chairman was saying, don't worry about it. If they're all really into it and they all are like, we need this. Well, what about that? That's actually that's benefiting you. It's not, as long as I have a good relationship with everybody and, we all respect each other, that benefits you more than it could possibly hurt you. And I thought that was really, it took me this long to get to the place where someone said that was critical, and it is critical. And now I see how that's really important to our success.
Yeah, I see that too. Yeah, that's actually a really good recommendation. I need to check that out too.
Yep.
It's time for the lightning round. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. So these will be quick answers, one choice or another, or just some free association.
Okay.
Comedy or drama?
I would say comedy all day. I'm very theatrical.
Day or night?
Definite night. Hate the morning. Sorry, Milos, again, we'll keep bringing you up. Hate the morning. Don't want to wake up early. We'll go out and, of course, dance all night long.
Vacation, city or island getaway?
Both probably lean city more.
Teleportation or time travel?
Time travel. Very thought-provoking question. Time travel. Like, let's go see this team of rivals in real life. Let's go.
What's your go-to hype song?
When I need to get it together, I listen to Syrian, if not specifically from Halab, Aleppian, old music that's so old that I don't think anyone knows who wrote the songs and who's the original singer of it, but it's emblematic, and I will listen to it's so ridiculous, that stuff. However, the reason why is cut all the noise, remember who the hell you are, nothing else matters, focus, you're that woman, and everything else has just been layered on, things, but at the core, this is who you are and you can do it. So block everything else out. That's what I think it does. And it always brings me joy, obviously, but it's reminding me to everything else is noise and you're going to be fine and you can do it.
Is there a particular artist or song that you can think of?
There's a genre of music called the Qudud al-Halabiyya, which is the songs of Aleppo. I don't know how else to explain it. They're I don't know how old, hundreds, thousands of years old. I don't know, but we still sing them like it's the hottest song that just came out last week. We still are that's a banger.
Yeah.
And it came out 2,000 years ago, maybe. I don't know, but it's true. You play it right now in front of an audience that is from that town or what have you. They'll be oh my God, turn it up.
That's the party anthem right away.
Party anthem from 2,000 years ago. Banger.
That's amazing. Well, thanks for making the time. I really appreciate it. It was great to have the conversation.
Thank you. This was great. Lovely to chat with you at length. I really appreciate you having me.